ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपदां सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So I'm very happy to be with you all on Sunday morning in our journey of Bhagavad Gita, and this is going to be the most magnificent journey through our life, where you'll discover life's most beautiful secrets. So we have completed 2 chapters and we are starting the 3rd chapter today, titled Karma Yoga. So with a brief revision, let us start. What was the acronym of chapter 1?
Doubt.
Doubt. Okay. So I'm sure whatever, you all know what DOUBT stands for. And chapter 2?
Gita.
Gita, where G stands for?
Guru.
I?
Identity.
Identity. T?
Two duties.
A?
Atmarama.
Yes. So with this acronym, you have a brief overview of what actually the whole 2nd chapter is about, wherein this chapter started with Arjuna surrendering to Krishna, accepting as his guru, and Krishna takes on the role of the spiritual master and then starts instructing him about the science of the ways to attain everlasting bliss through one's consciousness. And then we've seen how Krishna begins with the foundational concept of spirituality, of talking about I for identity, where Krishna spoke about the Atma Tattva. Later, Krishna speaks about the 2 duties, the duties that are pertaining to the body and the duties that are pertaining to the soul. And then towards the end, Krishna speaks about Atma Rama, what is the nature of a Sthita Prajna. And of course, Krishna also speaks about the concept of Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi Yoga means working with intelligence. The literal meaning is, but actually Buddhi Yoga means to work with no attachment to the results and with a desire to offer those results for the pleasure of the Lord. This is in brief what Buddhi Yoga is about. So that's what 2nd chapter in a nutshell is. And then the 3rd chapter has started. So 3rd chapter is divided into 4 sections. The acronym of the 3rd chapter is TREE. So first we will start with the acronym and then we will get into the concepts. So the 3rd chapter consists of 43 verses And this can be divided into 4 sections. And the acronym is TREE. Chapter 3, acronym is TREE. Easy to remember, right? So what does T stand for? T stands for Tyaga or renunciation. Yes. So verses 1 to 9 speak about Tyaga or renunciation. Okay, I hope you're all taking down in some book. And then R. R stands for rungs of the yoga ladder. And this will be covered from chapters 10 to 16. Sorry, verses 10 to 16. Yeah. So what is this rungs of yoga ladder? It speaks about a gradual elevation of a person's consciousness. Yeah. There's a ladder. There are some rungs to it. And what exactly is this? A very, very, very interesting concept. It's amazing concept. And in fact, it's one of the most amazing concepts in the Gita. Rungs of the yoga ladder. That we will be doing it next week. Then there is E for exemplary. So this is from verses 17 to 35. Exemplary, what is exemplary? So in the rungs of yoga ladder, we discuss about how one should perform one's prescribed duty with the purpose of attaining to the final goal of self-realization. So in the E, exemplary, Krishna speaks about what if one attains self-realization? Does it mean he stops performing his duties? No, he still continues to be a good example. So that's what E, exemplary, stands for. We will discuss during that session. And then the final E stands for the enemy of the soul. So in the 36th verse, Arjuna asks Krishna a question. So we all know that, what is right, but there is something that is compelling from within by which people take up to sinful actions. We all have this experience, right? We can clearly judge what is good and what is bad, but because of some force, we give into some weaknesses and we end up doing the bad thing even though we know it's bad. We all have experienced that as part of our life's journey. Yeah. So what is it that is compelling the soul to perform wrong acts even though one person is in knowledge? So Arjuna asks this question and Krishna answers this question towards the end until the last verse, till 43rd verse. So this is what the whole third chapter is about, the brief structure. So today we are going to speak about the first one, Tyaga or renunciation, verses 1 to 9. So in the second chapter, does anybody remember what is the title of today's session? What is the title of today's session?
Art of work.
Excellent. Yes, today's session's name is The Art of Work. Yeah. So in the previous session, we have seen about the science of the soul, right? That is what is Sankhya Yoga. Yeah. Sankhya Yoga means it's the science of the soul. So now today we're going to learn about the art of work. So what is actually the difference between science and art? These two terms are very familiar, right? In our field of education. These are very two important diverse categories, the sciences and the arts. What is the difference between science and art? Can anybody speak? Anybody wants to try? We know we've heard of these two terms most often. Yeah, but what is the difference between science and art?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes.
Mataji, science is more like logical and art is more like creative.
Okay, science has more to do with logic and art has more to do with creativity. Okay, that's what Veena is saying. Thank you for the answer. Any more? Any more?
Science tells about what it is all about, and art is how we do it.
Okay, yeah. Yes, Sindhuja is coming close to the answer. Yes, you understood it right. Okay, so I'll tell you what the difference is. Science is basically a methodical collection of information and knowledge. Okay, it's a methodical gathering of information and knowledge, which can be experimented, which can be tested, and which can be, hence proved, and you can draw some conclusions from it. This is what science is. It's a methodical gathering of knowledge. And what is art? Art is basically an expression of this knowledge. Yeah. So science is gathering of the knowledge, and art is an expression of that knowledge. So, for example, in second chapter, we have seen in Sankhya Yoga, the Atma Tattva, we've understood what is the nature of the soul. Yeah, Akledyoham, we've seen Najayate Mriyate va kadachan, Nayam Bhutva Bhavita Mana Bhuya, Ajo Nityam Shashvatoyam Purano Nahanyate Hanyamane Sharire. So we have understood what is the nature of the soul. And we have also seen Nainam Chindanti Shastrani, Nainam Dahati Pavakaha. The weapons cannot kill it. And the Nainam Dahati Pavakaha, the fire cannot set it ablaze. Yeah, it does not dissolve in water. We have seen so many such properties of the soul. So this is science. So art of works. So Karma Yoga, we are going to see about how this knowledge is going to be expressed in action. So karma has all to do with expression of that knowledge in action. So that is the art of work. So we have, lived all our life doing some work, right? So we've lived our life doing some work, be it studying or be it doing some household work. But did we ever think of how this work can be an art? So, for example, the most famous verse, the famous quote, work is worship. We all are familiar with this, right? So my question is all kinds of work worship? Are all kinds of works worship?
Only when we offer it to Lord Krishna, it becomes worship, ma'am.
Yeah, when we connect it to the Lord, that's when it becomes worship. That's what Bhargavi is saying. Okay, that's a good answer. Any other answers? Are all forms of works worship? There is a saying that if all works are worship, then the donkey would have been the greatest devotee because it works all day long. So what makes truly work a worship? It depends upon the consciousness behind. So apparently, if you actually see Duryodhana and Arjuna are kind of performing the same works, right? He is also into military art. He is fighting with weapons, and even Duryodhana is fighting with weapons. Externally, if you see, both of them are performing the same acts. But what is it that makes the fight, the war by Arjuna a worship, and that of Duryodhana a selfish act? Yes, so we're going to see all that in chapter 3. Today we're going to discuss from verses 1 to 9. In verses 1 to 9, the first two verses consist of the inquiry of Arjuna. Arjuna inquires from Lord Krishna some doubts that he has about work. Then from verse 3 to verse 9, Krishna clarifies those doubts by explaining him about Karma Yoga, the concepts, and basically the art of work. That's from verses 2 to 9. So we will start our session today by reciting the first verse. Arjuna Uvacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojyasais Keshava.
अर्जुनवाच जायसि चेत् कर्मणस्ते मता बुद्धिर्जनार्दन तत् किं कर्मणि घोरे मां नियोजयसि केशव.
One of you, please read the translation.
Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this gently warfare if you think the intelligence is better than fruitive work?
Yes. So Arjuna is asking Krishna, why do you want me to engage in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? So basically, in the previous chapter, second chapter, Krishna spoke about Buddhi Yoga. Yeah, that is work with intelligence. So, and so Arjuna is confused. If you are talking about intelligence and you're also telling me to avoid abominable work. So in the second chapter, Krishna also states in one of the verse that you should avoid abominable work. That means lowly works. So Arjuna is thinking that, okay, maybe I have to avoid sinful acts. That means I should avoid this war. So that's what Arjuna is processing in his consciousness, and that's how he's saying that you have told me that intelligence is better than fruitive work. Yeah. So then why are you telling me to engage in this warfare? That means Arjuna is thinking that this war, if I'm fighting for the war, it means I have to fight for the victory. That means I'm working with a fruitive tendency. I mean, fruitive tendency means expecting that I should win. So Arjuna has branded all work as being fruitive. So he's asking Krishna, so if you're telling intelligence is better, then why are you telling me to engage? So this is I'll explain you what this is. This is a famous misconception that all of us have in general. In general masses, the conception of spirituality means inertia. The basic understanding of a spiritual person means they give up everything, all their prescribed duties, and they go to a secluded place and they begin meditation. This is what is the understanding of spirituality is. That is why so many people, when they take up to studying of Gita or the scriptures, some of the elderly people start saying, why do you have to do this now? This is not the time for it. Yeah, you should finish your education, you finish your work, I mean, your job, your duties, and then you open Bhagavad Gita. But unfortunately, Bhagavad Gita speaks about how to lead this life. Yeah. So Bhagavad Gita speaks about how to lead this life right now, this moment, right from our younger stages of formation. So in this way, even Arjuna has, he got carried away by Krishna's instructions that maybe spiritual life means inertia. Inertia means just give up all actions and sit at a lonely place and start meditation. So that is why he's thinking that, why should I engage in this war? So first of all, he does not want to get into the war. First, in the first chapter, we saw so many reasons Arjuna gave to Krishna for not fighting. So now, having heard about Buddhi Yoga from Krishna, Arjuna is trying to use that as a means to escape from the war. Then, let me not fight. Let me give up. So, we also have this tendency that I know some students, once they come to spiritual life after some period of practice, they start saying, ma'am, I'm not able to focus on my studies. I want to just give up everything and I just want to study the scriptures and I just want to do bhajans and I want to give up studies altogether. Yeah. If a person is saying that, we need to understand they have not understood what Gita is all about. Krishna is telling Arjuna so categorically, do not give up your prescribed duties. Yeah, at any cost. So some people tend to use spiritual life as an alibi to escape work. Yeah, so but spiritual life is not about escapism. I will give you a small example. So you all know Bharat Maharaj, right? Who is Bharat Maharaj? King Bharat I'm talking about in Ramayana. He's the brother of Lord Ram. Yeah, Lord Rama, Lakshmana, Bharata, and Shatrughna. So Bharat Maharaj, so you all know that when Lord Ram went to the forests for Vanvas for about 14 years. So Bharat was so reluctant to become the king. So he was so reluctant and he was so devoted to his brother, yeah, and his worshipable Lord Ram, that he took the padukas of Lord Ram and he has placed them on the throne and said that these padukas will actually rule in the absence of my dear Lord Ram, and I will never sit on the throne. And he was so devoted to Lord Ram that he has never sat on the throne. He went to the outskirts of the place and he slept on the floor. He never even used the bed. And because he thought that when my brother is away and sleeping on the ground in the forest, how can I sleep on the bed? Now, this was his dedication for his Lord. And he never ate. It is said that the whole of the 14 years, what was Bharat's meal? He used to just have the barley grains that were soaked in cow urine. This was his food every day for 14 years, as long as Lord Ram was on exile. Because he thought, there is my brother in the hot sun in the jungle, where there is no proper food to eat. There might be some occasional fruits and berries and the roots from the forest, and you wouldn't even get water. How can I enjoy the Rajbhog of the palace? I cannot do that. And what he survived on just the grains of barley. This was his devotion to Lord Ram. So he was so devoted. So does that mean that he spent all the 14 years in, crying in separation from Lord Ram? Yes, he did internally, but externally also he took care of the kingdom in such an exemplary way that by the time Lord Ram came back to Ayodhya in 14 years, after 14 years, Bharat has increased the wealth of Ayodhya by 3 times. See, it's not a joke, we cannot even imagine what is the wealth of an opulent kingdom like Ayodhya. The kind of prosperity they had, the kind of charity Dashrath Maharaj used to give, abundant wealth. And Bharat Maharaj, in the absence of his brother Lord Ram, he has multiplied it by 3 times. So that was his efficiency. So this is Buddhi Yoga. Being devoted to the Lord does not mean that you abstain from your work. He was such an exemplary king. He saw that the whole Ayodhya was perfectly maintained. He was a perfect administrator. He took care of all his subjects. He ensured that the whole kingdom flourished. And he increased the prosperity by 3 times. Yeah, so he did his job perfectly well. While in the heart of his hearts, he was so devoted to his beloved Lord. This is the art of work. As through an example. Okay, so we will discuss further. Text 2. Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shreyo hamapnuyam.
यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन बुद्धिं मोहयसीव मे तदेकं वद निश्चित्य येन श्रेयोऽहमाप्नुयाम्.
One of you please read the translation.
My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me.
Yeah, so Arjuna, he got a bit confused. What is equivocal instructions? Anybody? What is equivocal? What is being equivocal? Equivocal means both sound the same. Unequivocal means it is a very straightforward instruction. Equivocal instructions means both sound almost the same. You're not able to find out the difference between the two. That is called, being equivocal. So Arjuna has, what are those two things which he got confused between, Arjuna, between Buddhi Yoga and Karma Yoga? So he's telling Arjuna is telling Krishna, I have become bewildered. Bewildered means I've become confused by your equivocal instructions. So tell me decisively, tell me for sure which is the best. Is it Sankhya Yoga or Buddhi Yoga? That means, should I simply control my senses, with intelligence, or should I perform my duties without fruitive actions? So Arjuna could not differentiate between these two. So he was asking Krishna, which one is better? Which one should I take up? So through this, so Arjuna, basically, he's a pure devotee of the Lord. Just like if you see in the Ramayana, Bharata, he had no confusion about his duty. He's a pure devotee of Lord Ramchandra. Similarly, Arjuna is also a pure devotee of the Lord. So he himself has no confusions. But Krishna has temporarily put Arjuna into that bewilderment so that he becomes confused, and in a way that he asks Krishna these questions, so that Krishna instructs Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, through which Krishna is instructing each and every one of us. So that is the reason why Arjuna here is appearing to be bewildered on a temporary basis, because of the Yogamaya potency of Lord Krishna. Okay. So now Krishna begins to answer Arjuna's questions. Text 3. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Loke asmin dvividha nishta pura prokta maya anag jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam.
Translation.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service.
Yeah, so Krishna here is giving a good as a good teacher. Krishna is a very good teacher. So he's giving the classification. So whenever we are confused, many times in our subjects, the classification gives us a very good idea, be it in pharmacology, the classification of drugs, or we've come across a lot of classifications, right? In our intermediate, we've learned about the classification of the various families of plants and animals and elements in chemistry and in physics. So classification always makes things very clear. So Krishna is the most expert teacher. He has classified, there are two classes of men. What are those two classes of men? One who follows the path of jnana, philosophical speculation, to understand what is the truth, what is reality, who is God. Yeah, the path of philosophical speculation. This is one class of men. And there is another class of men who are simply bhaktas or devotees, or who try to serve the Lord in devotional service. These are the two classes of men. One who tries to understand by philosophical speculation, and one who tries to directly serve the Lord in devotion. What's the difference between these two? I'll tell you in a way it is easy to understand. For example, there is a tree, and a person with a very highly research aptitude, he tries to understand how these leaves are getting the water. Yeah, what makes the water go up to there, and he does a lot of research and finally tries to come to the conclusion by all his understanding and experimentation that down below the ground is actually the root. Yeah, so through his experimentation, through his understanding, and through his research work, he comes to the final conclusion that the root is from where the water is taken and the water is pumped up for the nourishment of the entire tree, and the whole tree is actually sustaining on the basis of the root. So that's his conclusion. So this is philosophical process, speculation. Yeah, that is a way to know and understand that actually, yes, there is a God and he is the cause of everything, the cause of all causes and all that is. A person can come to that conclusion, but that happens after bahunam janmanam ante, after millions and millions of birth. By such process of extensive philosophical speculation, a person may come to such conclusion. Yeah, bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyante vasudevam sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabhaha. Yeah, by such extensive speculation to come to the conclusion that Vasudeva Sarvamiti, that Krishna himself is the origin of everything. He is everything. Yeah, such a person is very, very rare. Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. To find such a Mahatma is very, very rare. Durlabha means it's not possible, it's impossible. Sudurlabha means it's absolutely impossible or near impossible. So that is the way of philosophical speculation. That is, there are a lot of jnanis who go through the process of neti. That means, okay, this is not God, this is God. Maybe, this is not, and this is, maybe this, maybe not this. This is called speculation. So by this process, if one is sincere and serious, after millions of births, one may come to the understanding of who is the origin of this universe. And then there is another path. So one thing I told about the tree, to actually go understand the scientific basis of the tree and come to the conclusion that yes, this root is the origin of the nourishment for the entire tree. And there's a much simpler process wherein a person knows that the root is of course the origin with the faith, and he just simply waters the tree and the tree is nourished. This is the process of Bhakti Yoga, which is called simultaneously simple and sublime. That is, yes, you accept on the basis of the words of scripture that yes, Krishna is the supreme. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, which has been declared in all the Shastras, not in one, but many scriptures, Brahma Samhita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Puranas, Itihasas, all these are declaring loud and clear that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Yudhishthir Maharaj has performed the Agra Puja in his Rajasuya Yajna. And whom has he invited to perform the Agra Puja? He has invited Krishna, because he is the most worshipable person in the whole assembly. And at that time, Bhishma also glorifies Krishna, that he is none other than the supreme Narayan, who is worthy of worship by every living entity. So that is the position of Krishna. And Krishna himself, because he is the origin of all knowledge, and he is the purpose of all knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, at many a times, he declares himself to be God, and not just declares. Arjuna still asks in the 11th chapter, so Krishna, how do I know that indeed it is you? So Krishna actually shows his Vishwarupa. So we will see that in the 11th chapter. So the devotee simply accepts what is written in the scripture as the truth and worships the Lord with that faith. And that is simple. But it is simple only for the simple-minded. It gets complex to the degree we are more and more complex. So that is why the process of bhakti is called, it's simultaneously simple and sublime. Sublime because it is simple, but it is not easy. Yeah, that is the process of bhakti. A very, very beautiful process. And there are many benefits in the process of bhakti in it, that the process is so dear to the Lord that once a person takes up to this path, Krishna himself helps him or her in their endeavors. Yes. So Krishna is telling these are the two kinds of people, one who tries to understand by philosophical speculation, and one who serves by devotional service. And so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that of these two, Krishna consciousness or bhakti yoga is a more direct process. It's a direct process. Yes, text 4. Nacha karmanam anarambhan naishkarmyam purushošnute nacha sannyasanadeva siddhim samadhigacchati.
न कर्मणाम् अनारम्भा नैष्कर्म्यं पुरुषोऽश्नुते न च सन्न्यसनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति.
Yes.
Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection.
Yeah. So Krishna is telling, simply by abstaining from work, you cannot achieve freedom from reaction. This was Arjuna's misconception. Arjuna was fearing that maybe this war is going to produce some sinful reaction. That's why let me just abstain from that work. Let me abandon my duties. I abandoned my duty implies that means there is no reaction. That means I'm safe. This was what was Arjuna's conclusion based on his thought process. But Krishna is telling merely by abstaining from work, one cannot, achieve freedom from reaction. And nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. So here, basically, the idea is why one should perform one's prescribed duties is prescribed duty is a pathway for purification of the heart. And without sufficient purification of the heart, if one tries to renounce one's prescribed duties, then it reverts back. For example, we see in some movies that some householders, like the husband especially, they have a fight with their wife, or they're very disappointed in their family life. They're so frustrated, dejected, disgusted. Yeah. So what is the next thing they do? They wear saffron and they take sannyasa and go away. There are, in fact, many such people who do that, who are frustrated and dejected with family life, that they go away. But is this the way to sannyasa? Is this real renunciation? No, this is an artificial renunciation, because just because by becoming frustrated with material life, if you take up to spiritual life, it's pseudo. There are many such cases where if you see they do actually accept, take up saffron robe, but sometimes you also see that there are many pseudo sadhu babas in this world who are either smoking ganja, or who are smoking hookah, and indulging in many atrocious activities. But externally they say that we are very renounced people, and they even wear saffron. So it's such an unfortunate situation. Why did this happen? Because they have given their prescribed duties without purification of their heart. So one should continue performing one's prescribed duties, because prescribed duties lead to purification of one's hearts and desires. So Prabhupada, that's why writes that, without purification of heart, sannyasa is a mere disturbance to the social order. So unfortunately, that is actually why the whole, Indians, in fact, some of the so-called modern Indians, they have started disrespecting the saffron cloth, because they have seen so many such pseudo babas who, in the name of being renounced, they still continue their past old habits of either smoking or drinking or indulging in nonsensical activities. So much so people have lost trust and faith. Why? Because these people have tried to renounce their prescribed duties without having sufficiently purified their hearts. So their past tendencies have come up. So one should continue with their duties until their heart is sufficiently purified before they take up to the order of sannyasa. That is why the social order that has been given by Krishna is perfect. Go through proper brahmacharya life. Brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyasa. These 4 orders are a very, very systematic. It's an amazing concept. It's a mind-blowing concept of simply by following the dharmas of each ashram, one automatically attains to the stage of self-realization. Unfortunately, this order has been totally disrupted in the modern community. The first stage of life, thinking that we all live for 100 years, 1 to 25 is brahmacharya life. Brahmacharya means it's a stage of absolute celibacy where a person prepares themselves for the next stage of life, either grihasthashram or to remain a brahmachari all life. That is for boys, but for girls there is no no celibacy. They have to get into grihasthashram. So, and grihasthashram, there are particular duties. Perform those duties, and then from 50 to 75 is the vanaprasthashram, where the wife and husband live together in a relationship that is focused towards spiritual goals. And when a person leads such a life for 25 years, eventually the father can easily leave behind the family ties, having given away all the responsibilities to the younger generation, and go for the next and higher goal of life, that is sannyasa. It's a gradual process. It's an amazing process, actually, once followed with all rules and regulations. So, but that's a perfect social order, which is actually naturally made. That is why we see so many kings in the past, after having their, enthroned their own sons or the next heir for the kingdom, they used to go to the forests, for their tapasya, and to go through the process of, austerities for self-realization. So this is a natural process of life, not natural journey of life. So, but then right now, actually for Kali Yuga, sannyasa is not recommended because, first of all, there are no proper jungles which are free from threat. And also our educational system has not produced an order wherein people could actually maintain the conduct that is required, and they're not trained. The training is absent. So basically for Kali Yuga, sannyasa is not much recommended. But sannyasa means, actually the definition has been changed. It's not going to the forest, but it means to take up to full-fledged preaching. That is sannyasa. That's the final social order. Okay, fifth one. Text 5. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krit karyate hi avashah karma sarvah prakriti jairgunaihi.
Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatu tishtati akarmakrit karyate hi avasha karma sarva prakriti jairguneha.
Yes.
Everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore, no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment.
Yeah. So Krishna is telling here that everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities acquired from the modes of material nature. If you remember, in the second chapter, Arjuna was telling Krishna, I would rather go and beg. Yeah. Shreyam bhaikshum. Bhaikshum means bhaikshum api haloke. That means I would go and take bhiksha from door to door rather than fight this war. Because I would not want to eat this food that is tainted with blood. Rudhira pradigdhan. If you remember, that's what Arjuna was telling Krishna. So Krishna is now indirectly telling Arjuna that, see, you might, at this spur of the moment, you might want to leave everything and go and just engage in bhikshayatana. That means simply going and begging. But do you think Arjuna will continue that for a long time? He cannot continue. Why? Can anybody say?
Kshatriya, because he's a Kshatriya. So
Exactly. Jyotsna, I got the point. Because he is by nature a Kshatriya. So there is something called an innate nature, and that nature comes to us. Sometimes let's say, some women, when they're really frustrated about family life, and they say that, no, I'll just leave the home and go away. But do you think they can really go and away and stay away from home for long? No. It is the nature of the woman to love her kids or her family. That's where she invests. It is said that for a man, his accomplishment is in his occupational duty, his varna. But for a woman, her accomplishment is her relationships. Yeah, that's where a woman sees her accomplishment. The more she forms enduring relationships, the more she feels nourished at heart and accomplished in life. So even if a woman has to go away from the house, she cannot stay for long. She comes back because the attachment of the family pulls her back. So, but then when somebody is in anger, they might say or declare, I'd rather run away, go away from family for good and never return. But you cannot sustain that on a long basis, on a long-term basis, because there is something called the nature of the body and the mind, which comes up and which will not let you act in contrary ways. So even though Arjuna has said that I would rather go and onto the streets and start begging, Krishna is saying, you might go and start for a few days, but after some days, your nature will eventually come up. Even if you have to go to the forest, what will you do in the forest? You will start cutting the trees because it is Kshatriya nature, Kshatriya dharma, by your dharma. So by nature, the soul is active. The soul is by nature active. So some of other misconceptions is that by understanding what is the nature of soul, that is the entire science of the soul, a person might think that, okay, anyways, I'm the soul, I'm not this body. So let me just chill and relax. Why should I act? Why should I work? No. The nature of the soul, it's active. So artificially, you cannot get into inertia. Yes. So I mean, recently in our WhatsApp group, our Soumya has asked that when the soul is pure, how come it is conditioned? So that's what happens. As I said, when the soul comes in contact with material nature, it gets covered over by the material modes. So what are the 3 modes of material nature, which I discussed last time?
Rajas, Tamas,
Yeah.
Sakritam.
Sattva, yeah, sattva, rajas, tamas, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So the soul gets covered over by these 3 modes, because of which the soul begins to act in different ways and responds to situations in different ways. For example, I'll tell you what these modes are in a very simple way. You and your friends go out for a small hangout, and you ask for some soft drinks. Yeah, somebody chooses Maaza, somebody chooses Fanta, and somebody chooses Thumbs Up. Why is it you all have different tastes? It's not just like that. Actually, these tastes are deep rooted. It actually comes from the nature that we have. Actually, depending upon the modes which are predominating in us, our taste also is accordingly changes. Like, for example, people in Sattva Guna, they like juicy, fruity stuff, like the fresh mangoes, which are sweet in taste. These are the tastes of Sattva. Rajas means these people like, pungent, deep fried, very excessively salty, anything in excess, that is passion. Like masala, let's say veg biryani, these are all food in mode of passion, which is excessively spicy. Anything in excess, that is rajas. And what is tamasic food? Tamasic food is like that which is refrigerated for long, that which is like, for example, our pizzas, which are stale, which are reheated, etc., etc. The processed food, all these come, and the dead food, basically. These are all tamasic food. So basically, everybody, we acquire nature, depending upon the modes we are associating with. So to purify ourselves from these modes of material nature, it's a very purpose. So what is the purpose of all this purification? So we are speaking so much about, how our prescribed duties purify us. So what is the purpose of this purification? Why should we purify our existence? Yes?
So that we can concentrate completely on Krishna, Mataji.
Okay, so that we can focus on the Lord, okay? Hmm?
Because Mataji, the original nature of soul is Satchit Anand,
Hmm?
and to reach again back to our God, we should practice all these things.
Okay, very good thought process. Nice. Who said that? Soumya or Anushka?
Soumya.
Soumya. I mean, I'm very happy to see these days. I mean, the kind of deep thought process that is happening in you. It's very laudable. Very good. Okay, so
Thank you, Mataji.
Soumya is saying that originally we are pure and we get back and reinstate ourselves into our original positions, just like the fish takes back to water. That is the purpose of purification. That's wonderful. Yes, actually keep this question on. You will eventually find the answers, more deeper answers as you go through. So actually the Bhagavad Gita is not like an MCQ, you know, there is a question, there is an answer. No, the answer is revealed in different stages and different layers through different chapters of Bhagavad Gita, through different dimensions. That's the intelligence of Krishna. It's not like very objective that this is the cue and here is the answer. It's not just like how that is. It's much deeper and profound. So that's why as many times you read Bhagavad Gita, as many times you'll find it more nectarian. Yes, text 6. Karmendriyani samyamya ya aste manasa smaran indriyathan vimudhatma mityachara sa uchyate.
कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचार स उच्यते.
Yes, one of you, please read the translation.
One who restrains the senses of action, but those mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender.
Yeah, so it's very dangerous to be a pretender. So basically, some people make a show of being externally a spiritualist, but internally they have their own agendas and practices that are quite contrary to what they preach. So, you know, it is said the best preacher is the person who practices what they preach. If you're not practicing what you preach, then you're not qualified to preach. It's simple. So here, this is what Krishna is warning about. Do not be a mithyachari. Mithyachari means a pretender. Don't make an external show of renunciation, while internally you still have your impure propensities. So actually in the next verse, Prabhupada in the purport, he writes such a beautiful sentence, a statement saying that a sincere street sweeper is much better than a charlatan meditator. That means a person who is sincerely doing the sweeping of the streets with a sincere consciousness that I'm doing my duty, he's much better than a person who poses himself as a great yogi or meditator, but internally he's carrying so many sinful propensities in the heart. So this is about actually renunciation and Krishna's caution about not becoming a mere pretender. Text 7. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhate arjuna karmendriyaih karmayogam asakta savishishyate.
Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarbhate arjuna karmendriyaih karmayogam asakta savishishyate.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior.
Yeah, so what Krishna is telling about here is that one should not make a show of one's renunciation, rather lead a genuine life of true renunciation. I will tell you this in the form of a short story. It becomes more easy to understand. In the 12th century, there is a great Acharya, his name is Ramanujacharya. He had a great disciple, his name is Dhanurdas, who was a householder, grihastha. So Ramanujacharya, at that time, he had many disciples who were all in saffron, that is, who were in renounced order of the life. But somehow some of these disciples, they became very proud of their renunciation. You know, some people can proud of the renunciation, thinking that, okay, I have renounced this whole world, for all those things that everybody is running after, women, money, music, I have renounced all this, so I have become great. So with that renunciation, these disciples have developed a kind of pride in them. So Ramanujacharya, being a guru, spiritual master, he understood the mind of these disciples. And they thought that, okay, grihasthas means they are lowly. That means, they are attached. They always live in their cozy, comfortable buildings. They're always wearing fancy clothes, attending so many functions. These people are attached. So they are lowly. So this was what their thought process was. So Ramanujacharya wanted to teach them a lesson. So he sent these disciples who were wearing saffron to the house of his grihastha disciple, Dhanurdas. He said, he actually gave a very, tricky instruction. He said, my dear disciples, our ashram is running short of funds. We badly need money. So this is my direction. You go to Dhanurdas' house late in the night, and when they are sleeping, they have actually a lot of jewelry. You steal that jewelry and bring it, so that, we can use it for the development of our ashram. So the disciples think, oh, this is the order of our Gurudev. We have to immediately go and perform this burglary. So they go to the house of Dhanurdas. And when Dhanurdas and his wife were sleeping, the wife was wearing all the jewelry, the gold. So what happened is they actually started taking away the jewelry, the bangles and everything. So the wife actually kind of got up, and she saw that they were taking away the jewelry. So what she did, she extended her hand more so that they could take away much more easily. So on the one side, they had taken away, and she actually shifted to the other side, thinking that they will take away from this side also. They should take away from this side. But when she turned to the other side, they thought maybe she woke up, and they ran away, taking half of the jewelry. And they thought, yes, we followed the instruction of our Gurudev, and they went back and they gave the jewelry to their spiritual master. And when the husband, Dhanurdas, when he woke up, he saw that, why are you wearing jewelry on only one side? Then she starts telling what happened the previous night. Here are the disciples who came from the ashram, and they were taking off the money. I don't know, I felt sorry that maybe they needed some funds for their ashram. Then the husband started shouting at her, how could you be so dumb? You should have given away all the jewelry. Why did you even keep little? And he told her that, remove the remaining jewelry. Now let me go to the ashram and give it to Ramanujacharya. And wife immediately took away the entire jewelry and gave it to her husband. So, actually, upon the instruction of Ramanujacharya, the disciples were hearing all this, what was happening in their in that room, the conversation between the wife and husband. And just the previous day, actually, the disciples, they all wear the kaupin. Kaupin means, generally the renounced order people, they just wear a small lungi type of a thing, just one cloth. And that's the only possession they have in this whole world. And the previous day, one of the kaupin was missing. So they started fighting amongst themselves. This is mine, this is mine, this is mine. So they went back to Ramanujacharya and they, reported to him that this was what was the conversation between Dhanurdas and his wife. So Ramanujacharya said, see, here are the, so-called attached householders who were, willing to give their entire money for the cause of their spiritual master. And here you are, you have the one possession that is your kaupin, but you are fighting amongst yourself like cats and dogs for it. So who is attached and who is renounced? Think about it, he says. So renunciation means it's just not a mere external giving up of things. It's a true detachment that develops in the heart, that whatever is belonging to me, the riches or everything, it actually belongs to the Lord. So currently it is in my custody. And when the time comes and when the necessity comes, I'm willing to give it away in the service of the Lord. This is living in true detachment. This is living in the consciousness of a trustee, not that of a proprietor. So that is what Krishna is telling. Do not become a mithyachari. Do not become a pretender of detachment when you are truly not detached externally. Okay, last two verses. Niyatam kuru karmatvam karmajyayo hya karmanaha sharira yatra pichate na prasidhyeta karmanaha.
नियतं कुरु कर्म त्वं कर्म ज्यायो ह्यकर्मणः शरीरयात्रापि च तेन प्रसिद्ध्येद कर्मणः.
Yes, read the translation.
Perform your prescribed duty. For doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work.
Yeah, so it's exactly what we were discussing about. Krishna is telling Arjuna that do not become a pretender. Yeah, because one has to perform their prescribed duties even to maintain their body and soul together. So do not artificially renounce from them. Then you would simply become a mithyachari, a pretender. So the final verse of the day, text 9. So till now, we are seeing that Krishna is speaking more in the lines of Naishkarmya. That means Nishkama Karma Yoga. That means without expecting the result, just perform your action. So even beyond Naishkarmya or Nishkama Karma Yoga is Bhakti Yoga. Because in Naishkarmya, there is the conception of giving up the results of one's fruits. That's it. That means not being attached to the fruits of one's action. That is Nishkama Karma Yoga or Naishkarmya. But in the ninth verse, ninth text, Krishna speaks about one step higher. Because in Nishkama Karma Yoga, there is renunciation of the results of work, but there is still no concept of God. Yeah, that means you're giving up the attachment to the result. That's where you came to with Nishkama Karma Yoga. So, okay, I don't have attachment to my results, but what will I do with my result? That is the text 9. Okay. Yajnathat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara.
यज्ञार्थ कर्मणो अन्यत्र लोको अयं कर्म बन्धना तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर.
It's a very, very important verse. Actually, you can by heart this verse. Translation.
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in the way you will always remain free from bondage.
Excellent. Yeah. So here is the key. Now Krishna is taking Arjuna to a much higher consciousness. I will tell you what is the difference. For example, you're walking on a street, yes, and you found somebody has dropped a purse that looks little fat and bulky, let's say with full of money. So there are three things that people can do, right? First thing is they can either go, take the purse, put it in one's bag, go away. Okay, no, it's nobody's, so maybe God has given it to me only. And they put it in their bag and go away. And there is second class of people who come and they see that the purse is lying there with a lot of money, but they think, but it does not belong to me. And they just walk away. And there is a third kind of person who comes and who sees the purse lying there. And they think, oh, there is a purse here. Let me see who's this, to whom this purse belongs to. Opens the purse, see if there is an identification card, and they contact this person and return this person the purse. So of these three, which is the highest level of character?
Third one, the last one.
Exactly. Excellent. So Krishna in this particular verse, he's exactly talking about, in this 9th verse, is talking about that third level of character. Merely just seeing that it does not belong to me and walking away is nishkama karma yoga. That is okay. I am not the doer of my activities. So I am not the enjoyer of the results of my activities. This is a very high level of consciousness, of course. To reach there itself is a long journey. But that is simply not sufficient, because that's still that second level. It's just seeing the person, knowing it does not belong to me, walking away. Yeah, but higher than that is, yes, but from where from I'm getting this energy to do this work? To whom does all this opulence belong to? So let me offer in gratitude to that person who gave me everything. This is the highest consciousness. So, and when you're working in that consciousness, then it is that art of work which will make you not bonded to your work. Yajnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. That means for yajnarthat, for the purpose of Krishna, Krishna's, other name is he's Yajna himself. Karmanonyatra. Because for him you do your karmas. Lokoyam karma bandhana. Any other work is a cause of karma bandhana, bondage. Tadartham karma kaunteya. Work for his pleasure. Mukta sangha samachara. Then you will be liberated. Work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Offering all your results of your actions to him. And this is the way to free yourself from the bondage of work. And this is the art of work. Prabhupada writes in this purport beautifully that this is the great art of doing work. And in the beginning, this process requires very expert guidance. So all our lives we've been working, but actually to learn this art of work, the kind of work that will actually liberate us and not entangle us. That's a great training. It's a training that we need to give our own mind, our own body, our own intelligence. Oh, it's such a purifying journey. So Krishna has just begun speaking about that, the art of work. Thank you all very much. And how to perform this, we will see in the next session in the rungs of the yoga ladder. Thank you all very much. Any quick comments, questions? Yes? Anybody has anything to ask, anything to comment?
So, Mataji, like Yagnartat Karmanonyatra, this is Buddhi Yoga, no, Mataji?
Yes, to perform the act for the satisfaction of Krishna. Yes, it's Buddhi Yoga. That is intelligence.
Okay. If one is desiring for the results, then it is Karma Yoga.
Yes. One is desiring for the results. It is sirf karma. It's just karma. It's not yoga. If you're desiring means there is no yoga there. Karma yoga means offering the results of your action. Whenever you're connecting to the Supreme Lord, that is when the word yoga can be used.
Okay, in Karma Yoga also, we are offering the results to Krishna. Buddhi Yoga also, we are offering our results to Krishna, no, Mataji?
See, no, basically in Karma Yoga, there are two types. There is Sakama Karma Yoga and Nishkama Karma Yoga. Sakama Karma Yoga means there are fruits of the results, and you still have the desire for the result, but you're offering them for the pleasure of the Lord. Nishkama Karma Yoga means I do not have any desire for the result, and I am simply offering the result for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. These are the two types of Karma Yoga. These details we will be seeing in 5th chapter. Yeah, continue.
Okay. So like Nishkama Karma Yoga is same as Buddhi Yoga?
Yes, Buddhi Yoga will tell you exactly what it means is, it is the intelligence by which one comes to the Supreme Lord. This is given in 10th chapter. Yeah, Tesham Sattva Yuktanam Bhajatam Priti Purvatam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yena Mam Upayandite. You know, for the person who is sincerely devoted to me, yeah, tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purva, the one who worship me with love constantly, dadami buddhi yogam tim, I will give that intelligence by which one can come back to me. So it is that intelligence by which one goes back to Godhead. That is exactly the definition of buddhi yoga. You know, that is the intelligence that given by Krishna, which makes one go back to Godhead. That is the definition. So to act in that intelligence is buddhi yoga. You're understanding?
Yes, Mataji. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a very inclusive term. It's not a very exclusive term, buddhi yoga.
Mataji, in one verse we have spoken about like pretender.
Mm.
It is not better to act pretender. It is better to perform one's prescribed duties. But even we have some propensities, no, Mataji. Like, how could we overcome them? We want to come to the spiritual side. We want to progress here. But because of some old tendencies, we get attracted to them unknowingly. And it sometimes becoming disturbing for us. Unknowingly, we are get like, whenever we feel stressed, automatically we try to get diverted from this path.
Mm.
Those things like
No, we should not confuse this from performing tapasya. See, tapasya is a much needed thing as a part of spirituality. What Krishna is talking about is giving up of one's prescribed duties in the name of renunciation. As I just said, let's say, for example, that some person may be artificially, I mean, you know, genuinely actually frustrated with family lives because of so many fights and all that. So, you know, that does not mean he just gives up his prescribed duty of actually taking care of the family and running away from the home and then falsely pretend as if I have become a yogi or a meditator. You're understanding? It's escaping from one's duties. That is what Krishna is cautioning against in the name of spirituality. That is mithyachara. And what you are speaking about is we do have some internal conditionings because of our the way we are brought up or coming from previous lives, which are not probably spiritual in nature, which are not taking us towards spiritual life, but they are taking us away from spiritual life. They're called diversions. Yes. So these diversions have to be dealt with in an expert way. That means, firstly, we have to sublimate them. And then, I mean, see, there is something called artificial suppression. But in one of the verse, Krishna himself tells, what does repression or suppression give you? But when it comes to actually breaking the four regulative principles, you have to be very strict. No means no. Okay. There's a gradation. Then there are certain apparently, not so harmful diversions, but they have to be handled in a proper way, in a way that you transcend them over a period of time by engaging in things that will give you a higher taste. That is spending more time with devotees, spending more time with books, spending more time hearing good, spiritual instructions, or developing taste for music that is related to God. So that by developing higher taste, you can give up this lower tendencies. That's what Krishna has told in the second chapter also, right? Vishayanuvartante niraharasya dehina rasavajyam rasopyasyam param drishtva nivartate. That is good. By developing a higher taste, you can give up the lower tastes. It's not by any amount of mental manipulation. But there are certain things, as I said, the four regulative principles. A no means sure no. It's a tapasya. It may be a tapasya in the beginning, but it has to be given up. Okay?
yes, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji.
Yes. Okay. So we will call it a day. Any other questions? Please post it in the group. I will try to answer it. Thank you all very much. It was very inspiring to discuss Gita with you all. We'll meet next Sunday, same time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.